Can you hear me?
Oh my goodness.
The stairs are here.
Mike Kingman, can you hear us okay?
Zachary is a test, so I get around it by.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, friends, we're gonna call this meeting to order. It's 5 p.m. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our special board meeting study session. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone can try. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Next, we'll have our roll call and our approval of the agenda. Would you like to read the name?
Yes, Director Ray,
He's absent.
Director Kelly. Director Kingman.
Here.
President. Director Knapp. Student Advisor Schroeder.
Here.
Student Advisor LeBon.
She's absent at the time.
Superintendent Sweeting.
Here. Thank you. Next up, we have our approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to be made to the agenda, or do we have a motion to approve it as presented? Approve it as presented. Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Madam Clerk.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted. Next, we'll have our welcome and our overview of our learning outcomes and our school improvement plan, the district improvement plan process and coherence. Dr. Sweet, are you ready?
Yes, good evening. So tonight we're going to take a peek into mid-year progress for our school improvement plans as well as our district improvement plans. And we have representatives from the schools that are here and they're going to share. I wanted to show you just a graphic that Debbie did a nice job. Debbie Montgomery created this. The concept here, I showed it to you at the last session, but it was displayed differently. The concept here is that we have the strategic plan in the center of our work. And that around the green, it's hard to look see on the screen, but around in the green, it has the 4 goals in the strategic plan that's our strategic plan has the mission, it has our values, it has the 4 goals, and then outside of that, all coordinating together and aligned together is different things that we do to make that happen. And one of those at the very top is the school and district improvement plans, all working towards that the coherence of the 4 goals. There's other things around there, such as our board policy and procedures. There's goals that individuals have, like professional goals. There's teachers that have student growth goals. So all of that works in support of increasing student learning and achievement, which is goal 1. And then we have many other goals that support that work of the strategic plan, which is our equity plan, also the master facilities plan that's in the works, being refined, the one from 2014, and more. So it's just a picture of coherence and color focus. And the focus, so the bullseye is the strategic plan, which is like this. So moving forward, I'd like to introduce Kim Berg and the elementary team, which happens to be a team of that's turbo team, Jamie Miller from principal from presidents.
We do want you to know that the other 3 elementary principals are not here because 2 of them are at 5th grade overnight camp, even as we speak, probably walking into the dining room. We'll get to hear about camp food pretty soon. And Sarah Durant is in the process of meeting her brand new grandson. So we feel like those are all legit reasons for abandoning Jamie's present. Before we begin, we just want to, as always, remind you of what the school improvement process is. The best thing we can take away from it is that it's a process, not an event, right? We put some things in writing and we put some things into plans, but they're live documents. They change, they grow, they evolve as the kids and staff we work with evolve. And of course, raise your hand if you've ever seen this before. This is our universal SIP goal because every building has focused on UDL. varieties in the way the focus is happening, but Universal Design for Learning is somewhere between 5 to 10 year initiative. It's going to be with us for a while until it is so systematized. It's just part of the way we function. So hence the long timeline and the learning and evolution that will go along with it.
This was a little Shelley Moore's how is teaching like bowling, PD. We had to bowl first, of course, to be able to speak of that.
This is learning by doing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to
Keep going.
all right. This is my slide too. All right, so at the elementary level, remember, the team works really hard to plan as much as possible together and to have similar training across the elementaries. So we know meaningful professional development. We're at the early stages of implementing universal design for learning. There's a lot of new territory to cover, a lot of lesson planning to kind of stumble through until we get used to the methods of removing barriers before they begin. Before the kids walk in the door, we plan for them and teach accordingly, right? So by May of 2023, elementary staff will have meaningful professional development around Tier 1 instruction, variability for rules and flexible means. And more specifically, last year, this was a general approach, big picture understanding. This year, it's moving into lesson design. You've seen some of those examples at some earlier board presentations with the teachers from Eagle Creek Elementary that came and shared their practice. You saw Jamie's 5th grade Regions project not too long ago. So those are the results of some of the work that's happening at the building level around embracing UDL. The other thing is, we know social emotional learning continues to be at the forefront of what we need to support kids in their learning and in their growth and development as people. And so purposeful people is still, are we in the second full year of implementation?
Yeah.
2-ish, let's say ballpark 2. Time gets away from me, but it's still reasonably new. We're still getting used to the materials, but it's still really important to educate kids in a direct manner about what being a person of good character means and what it looks like, and to give some practice opportunities. Added to this year through our lap and title crew is a new social emotional screener that all elementary kids have taken. And there's been some work around creating some intentional groupings relative to what the screener data yields about kids.
So kids are showing, I got messed up, but kids are showing that we still need social emotional help. And so one of the things that we kindness got removed from purposeful people as a trait that mattered for some reason. Luckily, we have the Great Kindness Challenge, and that happened at the end of January. And so we just made that February's kindness, and then we used a lot of those materials. So this is just a kindness tree at Eagle Creek and at President's, where kids could write down happy, kind thoughts for each other. And this is every month, the character trait. We have kids that get awards from their classroom teacher, and we come and we take a picture together. It continues to be a district school-wide focus. And the only thing that we adjusted, I think, was making gratitude go with November, so that it would more closely align with a lot of our food bank donations and the things that we like to do with the PTA at that time. The next thing, I'm sorry that these slides are messed up. They weren't like that. But another thing that we've been focusing on is PLCs and just getting back to the heart of the PLCs, making sure that everybody went back to those norms and that we were there for student learning, and that we were going to focus on data, and that we're going to talk about how we can adjust our instruction to meet the needs of our learners based on that data. And so that's been a focus across all of the buildings at the elementary level. And this is a picture of my 3rd grade team. They've had some struggles this year trying to be a cohesive team and work together, and they worked through some stuff, and I came in and they were smiling and they were looking at data, and I was just like, I never take pictures of PLCs because it's kind of an intimate moment when you're learning from each other, and they were all cracking up, and I was like, oh, like for a presentation. So that's just a celebration. we are working on increasing tier one instructional strategies. And so, using the UDL, like you saw, our fifth graders came and presented their region projects. They talked about how having choice in both their learning and their presentation of their learning helped engage them and made it more fun. And this is our kindergartners were learning to be weather watchers. They were making breezy buddies. And so they got to pick from a variety of supplies to create their device to measure wind. And so they were having a good time making those, and then they used a rubric that allowed for them to have that flexibility, but still create the project and stick to the standards. We're also focusing on GLAD strategies and best practices in ELA and math for our Friday ED. So they've been just getting, you know, sometimes we're doing UDL things, sometimes we're doing GLAD strategies, sometimes we're focusing on myths about dyslexia, but we're trying to hit them with a variety of tier one supports in order to create that and increase that efficacy for teachers.
Oh, sorry.
This is our STAR reading data. So this is the percent of students that are at standard for reading by building. And then this is the early lit. So K1 and sometimes second graders take this. And then down here is something new that we found, which is a way to measure the percent of students that have grown a typical amount of growth at this point. So again, by building. So we're all around the same, but there was growth everywhere, which was great to see. And that early lit score is a little bit harder to discern because only a few kids take it at particular grade levels. And so the data previously, when we presented it to you, we just combined it and shown you like if they're at grade level here, we've just combined it over here, but we wanted to show you it separately because there are two different assessments.
It's a little small to read the key for the colors. Can you see what the blue and the yellow?
Oh, yeah. The blue is fall and the yellow is winter. So the fall STAR test and then the winter one that we just took in January.
And the third bar is that Pioneer?
Yes.
And it's a little bit less.
Yes.
And
So
any
winter,
guesses to why?
well, winter scores on STAR are kind of weird because it's an adjustable test. So it starts when you take it the first time, it starts pretty low and the kids gain confidence when they're taking it. The second time they take it, it starts where they left off before. And it was also January, so they just got back from vacation. And some of the kids that really like messes with their mind, right? Like, why is it starting so hard? And they don't have like a couple of those questions, like when you go and you interview and you get that question, like, tell me about yourself, you're like, oh, I know what I can do. But it doesn't, it just starts them right where they left off, and that can throw them off a little bit. When I was a classroom teacher, often my winter scores would worry me. And then my spring scores were just fine. And I remember my first year teaching, it scared me a lot. But then after that, it was just kind of a pattern I saw with STAR. I didn't see that as much, that same kind of dip.
This is also why STAR is not a grade. STAR is one assessment over the course of all of the learning that happens in a classroom. So, yeah.
Interesting, because then on the next graph, the Pioneer line went shooting way high. This is weird.
Well, and that's that early lit reading test, which, like I said, usually we combine it because it's newer, right? This is only the second year we've had access to the early lit assessment, and so it's hard to know exactly what it means. And sometimes we're having kids take it that maybe are ready for the regular STAR test, but we just put them there because we weren't sure yet. So
Early lit is more about baseline data than. Yeah.
so they don't, some of them don't even take it the second time, right? Because they're ready for real STAR by the second time. So it's weird to measure it, kind of.
And again, this data is black and white. It's a yes or no. This data, this is important. We have to know this. We also have to compare this with the data that we gather from classroom assessment. This data shows the percentage of kids that are making typical growth given their starting point. So these have to be weighed together because every kid starts somewhere.
But like here, not as many kids, like, you know, you might have had 20 kids take the test here and then here you only had 15. So that's why when you're looking at it, it's hard to compare.
And kindergartners do not take early literacy in the fall because that would be mean. There's a lot going on there. So we rely on Lockheed's data to gather kindergarten's baseline literacy and pre-literacy information.
So this is the same, but this is math and there is no early math test. So this is all together showing our math scores from fall to winter by building, and then also the percent of students that have made typical growth for the year thus far. So what are we doing with this data? We're using database interventions, so focusing in on those PLCs, giving UDL, PD time to plan UDL lessons, talking about the UDL lessons, sharing out what worked, what didn't work, how we can tweak it. Additional lab paras, I was able to hire a whole full-time para this year using my OSSI grant money. She's able to she's met with 26 students from consistently over the year. And that's an additional 26 students I wouldn't have been able to serve otherwise because they wouldn't have been at the bottom of the skill set. And I think Camp Prairie has an after-school program for EL she's funding also with that grant. And then we have our weekly PD that, depending on the week, we have switched through a variety of things, but all focused on those tier 1 strategies. And then our cell groups are created and running based on the cell screener, and it divvies kids out based on their externalizing behaviors and their internalizing behaviors. And those that have the internalizing behaviors, our counselors are meeting, and she has a friendship group, and she has a worry warrior group, and she also has a girl code group for some of our 4th grade girls that need to learn how to empower other girls. And then our externalizing group, our behavior TOSA, Dr. W is running groups for that. And that's kind of coping skills, anger management, friendship groups as well. So we've been really lucky to have those groups running this year. And we just did the cell screener again, and they're looking at the data this week, and then they're going to adjust the groups, pull any new kids that rise to the top, and serve those groups for the rest of the year.
You remind me what the GLAD strategies are.
Guided language acquisition design.
Thank you.
Yep. Most of the time, like old school language instruction is very abstract. And let's talk about grammar. Isn't that inherently fascinating to like 0.2% of the population, and everybody else is zoned out? But GLAD tends to make it objective and movable and living. Great for all kids. It's specifically for English language learners, but all kids benefit.
A lot of visuals included.
Sometimes they'll use volume markers, to try to get all of the sentences involved.
My favorite GLAD strategy is a consensus board. And so it's like a sheet of paper that's folded like this, and it has a square in the center. And you give kids a problem to solve, and they all have think time, and they all solve it their own way. And then they come to a consensus in the middle, and they use everybody's idea. And the whole thought is everybody has their own color that they're using. And so in the center, you can see whose thought was like put together in this consensus, and then they can share it out, and you can use it with any subject. And kids like it because they have that think time, that personal time to solve, you know, but it's low pressure, and then they can work together to come up with something.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Terry Mark and Andrea Dillard. Mark Terry's principal at SBLC, so Valley Learning Center, and then Maria is principal at West Home School. District Schools of Choice.
Thank you. Your name is. Okay, I'm Carrie Marsh, the principal of Stillaguamish Valley Learning Center. Our goal is same that you just heard. We're talking about UDL and purposeful people. And then student success is measured by standardized testing, reporting, iReady, course pass rate data, and smarter bonus. Our action steps, this is just a review from beginning of the year. We're working in PLC groups. Our PLCs look a little different than the other schools in the district because we only have one grade level teacher for first grade. So we are in an elementary PLC, a middle school PLC, and an Arlington Online Program PLC. Elementary is working on meaningful learning and the UDL lesson planning and design. Middle school is focusing more on home learning engagement, so getting kids to do the work that has been designed and completing it and turning it in. And AOP teachers are working on student engagement, so keeping our kids that are working at home engaged and connected with the schools. And we're also have an intentional focus on giving social emotional support to our students working at home sometimes, or we found last year that it's easy for them to get lost because they're not in front of us. We are working on a UDL book study. We just finished it last week. We were reading UDL Now. We have our monthly early release meetings, our weekly early release meetings every month. And we're also doing a lot of work with purposeful people because we're K-12. We have purposeful people and character strong, and we mesh them both. We do a monthly trait. We do a school-wide assembly, just our K-8 on-site group. It's very exciting. The kids love it. And we also do with our AOP kids, we are targeting and working really hard at making sure each kid, let's say most kids, come to campus for a weekly check-in. We want them on our campus and connected with the school so they don't forget that we're there. We're also learning that that helps create a relationship with their teacher. And the better they feel about their teacher, the more questions they're asking and the better work they're doing. Structured support, we have lab resources this year, which has been great for our K-5. We also are refocusing on MTSS. That's seemed to have gone away a little bit with COVID and readjusting. And as we're rebuilding, we're looking at our MTSS focus. This year, we also have a special education teacher on site full-time for the first time, as long as I've been there at least. And we have a school psychologist on site half the week, 2.5 days a week. So here are updates of the action plan. We've created and implemented a new registration process for AOP, which is fantastic. We think we are a lead. Let the record show. We got a thumbs up from AHS. We share a lot of kids with AHS, and last year our counselors and registrars were getting overwhelmed with emails and email chains and things were getting lost. So our AOP team met with a contractor who taught us how to create these great spreadsheets, and it's working very well. It's supporting especially the registrars. They have a lot to do and a lot of pieces to their job. And so we're putting the onus on the counselors and the teachers, and the registrars are able to do their job better. Our registration process, we have, besides that piece that's for the adults, we've also revamped it to remove barriers for our students. We have intake meetings now. Everyone come through with an intake meeting to discuss expectations. We're a different school. Being alternative, we have different requirements. And then this is a really big one, frequent meetings with parent and student for the first few weeks of enrollment. So if you're in middle school AOP, you're coming on site every week for a month. And if after that month it's still not going great, we're going to keep having you come on every week. We do have a few kids that we have Zoom in, if that's easier, but we really try to have them, the teachers call it Starbucks style. So they come, they check in, they talk about missing work, then they just have a spot to sit and work. They provide them with snacks and drinks and all kinds of fun stuff. We just want them to come and feel at home and have a relationship. We also notice that a whole lot of work gets done the night before, which is what we really want. We do offer Zoom meetings to make meetings with parents more accessible. We know that parents work and it's hard to come, but even if we can get their kid on campus and parent Zoom, that's awesome. And then for students with an IEP, before they come into the program, we have case managers and SBLC meet with case managers at their previous school so that we can make sure their IEP is showing the right amount of minutes and goals for the different program. Enrollment, this is part of our story as we move through the progress. The bottom one is headcount. So we started at 187 and we're at 222 currently, or as of March 1st. And FTE, we started at 201 and we ended at 243. That's important to note because that's a lot of kids to come and go, especially with FTE. Remember, FTE for a lot of our high school kids, we get 0.17. So that's about 5 students to make 1 FTE. When we talked about reducing barriers and making the program more successful for onsite and AOP, our middle school team is really pushing on looking at progress. One of the pieces of ALE that's different is we have monthly progress meetings, similar to what traditional schools do in October and March. We do it every month. And so we decided to start tracking progress. Our goal is 80%. We noticed something interesting that at the beginning of first semester and the beginning of second semester, we went down. Those are new kids. The story I think it tells is that we have a handful of kids that come to the program thinking they can hide out and don't have to do any work. And once we catch them and either send them back to the traditional if it's not working, or say, let's build some interventions and keep you plugged in, we see some success. So I'm hoping that February gets us back above 80%. That's a lot of work for teachers. That's a lot of paperwork. That's a lot of meetings, but it's worth it. It helps our kids stay connected. Here's our ready data. This is K-12. That was also K-12 data. So that's our kindergarten kiddos that are coming on site all the way to our kids that we're trying to push across the graduation stage. Same with iReady. This is K-12 data. This is fall. Reading and math, we're looking at 137 tests and 152. And so then notice the jump. We were able to pull more kids in and get more testing. The testing does help us for when we're helping them select classes where we can see where their strengths lie. We can help them decide which classes are going to, especially the high school kids, obviously, what's going to serve them the best. But the great story is if you look at tier 2 and tier 3, those numbers went down from fall to winter. And our tier 1 numbers, math especially, we started at 7%, which was a little bit scary. And we're up to 26% in winter. And we have the same feeling Jamie does. And that winter still does feel a teeny bit scary. So spring is where we get a payoff usually. So we're going in the right direction. Oh, questions? Okay. Right.
If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to sit here because we're fresh with data. And so if you've got questions, I can kind of bounce between. Are you good with that? Yeah, that'd be awesome. So Weston School Improvement Plan, nothing's really changed in the 3-4 years that I've been at the helm. Keeping it consistent. We are looking to grow every single kid in their literacy, in their math, in their average daily attendance. Last year, we added a culture goal, really trying to build school culture in and make good connections with our families. You don't mind? All right, so let's talk data. There's a lot of red on here. And yes, the numbers are small, Mary. That's also why I'm here. So let's look specifically at reading. In the fall, overall, we had 13% of our kids on grade level. By the winter, we still had 13% of our kids on grade level. I check this pretty regularly, and in the spirit of full transparency, at one point in the winter, we had fewer kids in tier 1 than we did in the fall, which really opened up some conversations. Well, the way that I'm going to end is it is the important piece of how good this data really is. And at that point, we also had not had all the kids take it. And so now this is the final data of the winter. So we at least got all of our current kiddos tested. For math, you can tell we're in even worse shape. 4% of our kiddos in the fall were on grade level. Huge, because by the winter we grew to 9. And that was a big success. Again, we're going to put an asterisk next to that and talk about how good this comparison data is shortly. So hang tight on that one. If you don't mind hitting the next one. Obviously, daily attendance is a struggle for our kiddos. On average, through today, 72% of our kids attend on any given day. We look at it by grade level, we look at it by gender, race, subgroup, you name it. Nothing jumps out other than we've got work to do on attendance. The next slide is where things get
Quick question.
Yes.
Joanne?
Yeah.
So, because I know your school is a little different than some others, potentially, what would be like the high mark that you would expect to get for attendance? I mean, I don't think it would, maybe I don't understand.
Well, so East Coast born and raised, right? Less than 93% of kids attending every day landed schools on basically watch lists for the state of North Carolina. So 93 is what I'm going for. If we can hit 80%, that's our standing goal, each cap. They spin the wheel and we award them with something. I think this month it's Steve Haywood has to do a TikTok. And they're all very excited about the TikTok. Don't worry, it will be school appropriate. So you can see kind of a breakdown of attendance rates. Yeah, the next slide is where things get interesting. So this is new data that we started collecting this year. Essentially, why is our data not changing? Or why is our data getting worse from fall to winter? They're not the same kids, right? It's not an apples to apples assessment. And so that also makes strategies really tough for us. How do we put things in place to help grow kids and measure to make sure it's working when who we're measuring is always changing? So what have we found out so far this year? On any given cap, we've got 36% of our kids turning over. Where are our kids going? Well, the cool thing is the vast majority of them, we're keeping them in district. We've got large numbers sliding over to AOP, and we broke this data down by grade level as well. We've got the other large number of them going over to AOP, so Open Doors and AOP. We've got a couple saying, hey, I want to go back up to the mothership where my people are. Some of the other ones are 20-day attendance. We haven't seen you in 20 days. By law, we've got to pull you. You were a choice transfer. Perhaps your behavior is not ideal, and it's not going to work. So we've hugged you and sent you back to your home district. We've got kids in treatment. We've got kids that have graduated. We've already got 3 graduates this spring or this winter, which is great. So you can kind of look at the pie chart. There's some other not great reasons why they're not there, but what we do know is we're losing kids. So it's not on this slide, but as we are preparing for our latest comprehensive needs assessment, and I'll be happy to hand this around if you guys really want to look at pretty graphs. Essentially, 50% of our kids that started with us in the fall are still with us. We have lost half of our kids. 53% of our freshmen are still with us. 56% of our sophomores are still with us. 41% of our juniors, so we've lost a lot of them. They're the vast majority, when you look at their pie chart, they've gone to AOP, and 50% of our seniors. So the work that we are going to be doing is around ways, if there's anything we can be doing to try and hold on to them. Some of them leaving are so far out of the school's capability of holding, but if we do have the ability to continue to wrap around and hold them, we want to do a better job doing that. So that'll play a big part, I'm sure, in school improvement plans to come. The good news is, good news and bad news, we qualified Weston for cycle 2 for the I grant, which means we're entering a budget crisis. There will be grant money available to Weston. Beautiful news, Open Doors also qualified. We don't know those dollar amounts, but we'll be strategic about how we choose to use and leverage those. Last but not least, a plug for, if you don't mind hitting the next slide, the community that we build. April 14th, we have a drive-in movie, The Goonies. We'd love to have everybody show up. It is not paid for by any school funds. It is a grant-funded event, FYI. The top picture, if you guys notice Mrs. Marsh in it, we have got an amazing partnership between our 2 schools of choice where we are now picking up large amounts of Stille kids, which is great. She came in the building and it was like flies on honey. Mrs. Marsh. So she got to take a picture with a lot of her kiddos. But our CAP efforts, our barbecues are working, parents are showing up. They love the days when Johnny, AKA the I wish I was a real therapy dog, shows up. All that good stuff. The community stuff's working. So that's it on Weston. Yes.
Andrew, what, not that you have this data right at your fingertips, but just a overall, what does this data look like compared to last year in terms of attrition or loss?
We weren't tracking it last year.
Oh, okay, so
This
that
is-
helps me, okay.
Yeah, this was the first year. I mean, as we watched a cycle of, well, it doesn't really feel like we're making progress
Okay,
on
so really
this
dug deep.
growth. Why not? Well, is it the same kids?
Okay.
Not the same kids. How many are we losing? I can guess this year we've tracked it. So it'll be interesting to see,
Yeah.
going forward.
And I was gonna say, I think about this at another time, but I'm not sure if there are many schools like what Western offers in the state. I don't know what percentage of schools are that kind of. But I'm wondering if you could, to me, that would be interesting to compare what they've noticed, if they're tracking something as in-depth as yourself, or if you're a lone wolf on this, but I think that would be a fair assessment. I mean, I don't really want to compare it to AHS or something of that nature. I really would like to see another program equal to Weston, maybe of a similar size, but just like the ratios.
We collaborated with the ESD. There's
Yes.
not really a consortium of traditional. Weston is a traditional school from a funding standpoint.
Okay.
Stille Valley is alternative, right?
Yeah.
So let's get
There's a
those
distinction
clear.
there, yeah.
So all school of choice, traditional schools, there's not a consortium within Snohomish.
Okay,
So I've been working with the ESD to try and build that,
that'd be great.
because that would be great PLCing as well.
Yeah, I think it would be very valuable. I mean, I'm really glad what you're offering here, and I think it gives you a greater sense, you can really sit back and look at what is in front of me, and then you can't make changes until you have data, right? And you'll need a couple cycles of that before you could really make some tweaking, but thank you for what you're doing in that depth, and good luck with, getting, some other data that you can then have even a wider lens to see where you rank with others, or what others are doing that might work with what you're doing. So
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to the attendance slide?
Yes.
Cause I saw a little dip on the weeks where there was like a day off from school, like Veterans Day or Thanksgiving or Martin Luther King Day. Is there any other patterns that you've seen, like,
Attendance goes up at the end of cap. So it's good that we use a cap and it's essentially the 4-week period. That last week of school, we know is gonna be our highest attendance.
So cap is the thing that you do internally. That's the rewarding of.
Yes, but it's that the kids, man, maybe I can actually salvage some partial credit. I'm gonna show up this week and see if I can turn in those assignments and get it.
and so they're motivated? that
They're
week.
motivated the last week of cap, first week of cap, not so much, because we've got 3 other weeks to be able to do it. The other trend we see semester wise, cap 1, the kids that are earning, it does this until the fresh start of semester 2, and then it does this. Those are also very typical trends. So.
I know grown-ups.
Sure. Great, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, very
Keep it up,
much.
Andrea.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Leslie Olson, principal from Post Middle School, and Trevor Summers, principal from Colorado Middle School. I'm introducing Dr.
You a bigger deal?
Yeah, oh, it's Howard first. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, we have 2 goals. One is the UDL and one is the PBIS/school culture goal. So starting with the PBIS goal, our goal every year is to enhance student behavior, enhance our school culture, and reduce suspensions and referrals. This year, we've added Character Strong as a tool to try to give our students some much needed training and support in a variety of different characteristics that they need. We do our behavior walks at the beginning of the year. We do a mid-year refresher. We've done grade level meetings talking about individual students and behavior concerns. And we do our positive recognition. So we send positive no cards home. We do our SOAR awards. We've done 2 of those this year where we recognize about 100 kids for displaying positive behavior in different departments. And I would say for a mid-year update, if I had to sum it up, we are not on track to meet our goal. Student behavior has been a significant challenge this year at Howard. And so when I say we're not going to meet our goal, we're definitely not going to reduce referrals. We're not going to reduce suspensions. We are already past where we were the last few years. I would add the caveat of that's okay. Part of PBIS is not just training and teaching and not consequences. Sometimes student behavior is required a consequences layer on top of that. But at this point, we're not on track. We're not going to reduce. But I still feel like what we're doing is having a positive impact for our kids. I think the Character Strong has been a nice addition to intentionally teach character traits to every kid in the building, not just the ones that work their way to the main office. So that is where we are with our behavior.
What seems to be the behavior that's getting in the way when you see an individual student?
The one, about 3, vaping is a big deal.
Okay.
As far as like when you get to suspension level, vaping's become a huge problem. The classroom disruption that is intentional and repeated for the sole purpose of I don't want to be in this class and I know exactly what I have to do to not be in this class. And so, and typically, I mean, that's not new. We've seen that forever in school, but our efforts in curbing that have not been as impactful. Kids are repeating behaviors and the consequences, the parent contacts don't seem to be as impactful as they've been in the past. So there's an apathetic mindset with a lot of our kids. We're seeing a lot of it in our 8th grade class at this point, but it's in pockets in every grade band. But I would say those are the top 2.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Arlington High School agrees.
And so does Post Middle School.
For our district-wide goal is UDL, as you probably remember from last year. We did not do much with UDL, so this is kind of our first year in taking this on. At Howler, Carrie Holgeson, Carrie HB, Brenda, and I don't want to miss anybody, but I think in this room have been like the 3 main supports from the district office. They've done a great job. They've come down, we've done 4 modules, 3 modules. We still have 1 more to go. Our staff has been receptive with some healthy pushback, I would say. But even despite some of the pushback, we're seeing results. They are getting more comfortable with the idea. We're seeing it in the classroom. We're having conversations in our walkthroughs and in our CPAP observations. We are seeing it in all departments. So it's not just math, it's not just ELA. We're seeing it in our PE department. We're seeing it in science, in electives. And I do think for that goal, to get a collective understanding and some more exposure to where we can start creating lesson plans, we're definitely on track in regards to what you do. Be happy to answer any questions. Yes.
Can you explain what a TPAP
It's the formal evaluation that we do. So we have 2 or 3 observations with teachers. So we do a pre-conference and then we do like a formal observation where we watch a full class period. Then we do a post-conference where we sit to discuss how the lesson went.
Teacher evaluation.
Good. There's not gonna be a quiz for all the different presentations, right?
Yeah. questions?
I wasn't gonna.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, the reality of the behaviors. And I think supporting our elementary, then supporting the middle, and then ultimately the high school. I think when we go to the ground level, which is elementary, and get that going, and it sounds pretty solid. I think you will find in a couple of years, right, that. But in talking to my own teachers and I'm at the elementary level, I'm not sure if you found this, but in talking to some of them, they were thinking that parents themselves seem less engaged. And this is from teachers who've been teaching for 15 years and how it has maybe shifted from, I call it the triangle, the parent, the student, the teacher, to, well, Johnny's now your problem. Johnny's, it's on your watch during your time during the school day. And I'm just not sure if you've seen a shift maybe in parental participation, if you find that possibly be a factor in any of your behavior challenges.
I wouldn't say that's anymore. I think I've experienced that every year.
Okay.
And I don't see that anymore. I'm still able to get parents on the phone and I get some of the same parents are saying, yeah, I know, I've tried this, this, and this.
So you're both like, okay.
So we can both talk about how frustrated we are with the lack of.
So you're both like, well, you gotta.
Right, but I'm not seeing, I don't know about the others, I'm not seeing less parent, sometimes it's hard to get some on the phone, but parents are answering and they're talking to me and we're trying to get different solutions. So no, that's not a significant impact from what I'm seeing.
That's good. Just here.
Thank you, Trevor.
All right, folks. Same stuff as Trevor, but this ended a little bit Leslie style. So where are we headed this year? Where I took you with me after last year, but really focusing on inclusion and equity. We launched our Character Strong for the first year as well. This is our second full year, if not 2.5 years in the UD Post, but we kind of housed when I started a concentration of special education programs and inclusion. I started working in high school. So it was a natural fit and we are really working on implementation. I am excited about that. I'll share what things happening there. We really revisited PLCs like everyone else has talked about we revamped MTS and MTSS, and I can tell you we're looking for a whole nother revamp. Like we're learning along the way and realizing we need to do better. So our school improvement is if we focus on the launch of Character Strong, the launch of the web program, Baby Link Crew, we've launched it this year, targeted use of principal directed hours through a culture and climate team. We focus on how staff culture supports. We're working on the implementation and the meat of universal design for learning, the refocuses in PLCs, and the use of equity lenses to guide decisions. Then all these data will improve. I'll show you right now it's not all improving, but we're sure trying, and there is a lot of cool and good stuff happening. This was when I made the slide, we were through quite a few, or lesson 23 on 3.7 of Character Strong across the system. We do it once a week, but like this week is paused, so we're going to Kevin Hines tomorrow. So we do something every week, character related, and whatnot. And there is a lot of positive feedback. We've definitely had a growth kind of getting everyone on board. But kids are engaging and teachers are moving forward in great conversations. Attendance is still a real barrier. And I would say that it's like post-COVID, it's easier to stay home still. Like, it's just, it's a culture piece, and I argue for staff as well. Like, I'm scratching my head at some staff stuff. But on daily average, we're at 574 out of 645. We're at 89.48, my report said. Our weekly truancy report is still 40 plus students, but I'm having kids with, like, I mean, just talking Montana, her daughter has 45 days of school, all excused for like an illness, so for her, 45 days is a lot. Like, so we're still finding those barriers. We're still seeing a high number of mental health absences, family experiencing hardship barriers, whether it's housing, things like that, we're noticing at post, and families seeking alternative schooling options. And I'd argue sometimes it's just too much being at a comprehensive. So we're seeing that pop up more. They want something smaller. They want something alternative. It's hard. And so we're still just navigating partner with SBLC a lot. Actually, it's been kind of a lull right now because she's full. But I mean, Karen and I work together on quite a few how to support some families. I track Fs for a variety of reasons and also with our trade. So I looked at 21-22, semester 1 and semester 2. And I'm looking at my dates. I think this is 2021. And then this is 2023. I'm looking at this 4 more Fs across the board because that's like, you're really struggling here. And I only have 7 8th graders, and we could speak at length about those 7 8th graders and have a slide deck, but we're trending in a good spot. For kids are 3, I've only got 7 total across our whole building. Some kids just failing 1 or 2, that's where the need is, and that ebbs and flows by week. But I'm just watching trends because we want to get these kids help right away before they get to here. And if we're here, we're talking about a lot of different things going on. And so we do look at that. This is going to be hard to see, but what I want to show you is the green is bigger. We're growing. So this is iReady for Math. I don't know if they're pretty triangles. I'm just throwing data. But yellow is on or near grade level. So red is below or needing intervention. We still have a lot of work to map. Not surprising, but our red is decreasing. We have more kids moving. The most exciting part on here is that with an inclusion model, we had all 6th grade and gen ed settings. Every 6th grade student with an IEP made average or above average growth being in gen ed. And that it's just powerful for that first-hand instruction. And some still need more support in different ways. But that was a big aha that my team just kind of, as we're navigating our semester 2 data, which was really cool. So this kind of breaks it just down by grade level. This is STAR for reading. We're still having quite a few kids struggling, but this is showing growth across grade levels. Every ELA teacher saw an upward trend of growth from fall to winter 2 that was more than they planned, and they're anticipating this spring. We didn't see a lull this year. I want to share our counselors, how much work they're doing. So I think it's a piece you guys don't see. Counseling visits from September to early March, 787. Their main reasons were emotional assistance, behavior struggles, academic planning, or social issues, social conflict. We did targeted interventions. We started 4 small groups working on executive functioning. Counseling led, we have a mental health counselor on site, one per day. He has a caseload of 5 kids. It's not a lot, but we're getting a few kids. We're also using more telehealth, but that's like a parent setting it up. We just provide the space and the computer.
Oh, nice.
So I don't have those tracked, but any parent could request that we accommodate and figure that out for kids.
So they get counseling of the day, is that?
If that's when they can see their counselor from Everett Clinic or whoever they're seeing, it needs to be telehealth and it's only during the day, we will accommodate by having that kid in the office. So we're sure trying to do that. Just some points for consideration that kids are needing a higher frequency and number of visits. So the average kid is needing to see the counselor 3 times. It's not 787 different kids. They're needing more support to navigate whatever's going on. Just the mental health needs are so much more complex. Like there's so many pieces to it. And that school counselors aren't mental health people, but they're having to resource that out, and it's just legwork that they're seeing. We are seeing higher levels of drug use and self-medicating reported by students. So vaping, marijuana, are the main ones we're seeing.
Did you track this last year also?
No, not to this level. Counseling visits, I'm sure I have. I looked at it a little differently this year, but we're digging a little deeper toward what our counselors are doing this year. And just a high number of students who've been hospitalized. So, and suicide and behavioral health, we're having a very high number. So discipline is something we are tracking because with all these interventions, is it going down? We've had September to January, we had 489 referrals. 133 are from fights or assaults, nicotine, marijuana, or alcohol on our campus, or harassment, intimidation, and bullying. These are pretty significant. We've had a social media problem at posts of kids not using things appropriately. And on Monday after spring break, we're asking phones to be put away at all times during the day before they're supposed to be put out. But we're having problems with bathrooms and things, and phones and social media, things I can't control are, I would tell you, the main culprit. We're also seeing students, things that are happening outside of school carrying over. So social conflict, either from downtown or pieces, we're seeing those bigger things carry over, and us trying to piecemeal the support plans. We've had 70 total suspensions, and I would tell you that number is high, but we also have had an EBD program where some kids were working on placement because Washington State doesn't have a lot of placement, and we keep coming back to the table. But I would argue in a days here, we're still working on what's the best place and how to serve a few kids in the right environment. And our goal is to keep them in school, but there are certain days that they can't meet that requirement of safety, and those have to be counted for us. So just a consideration. So on the horizon, UDL implementation, kids and inclusionary practices and covering the spectrum. We are going to really focus on reading strategies across all content classes. So we know that kids are struggling with reading. So what does that look like consistent across every single class from your elective to, and be more strategic as a building. Cross-curricular projects, that project-based learning, but our goal is going to be one a semester for next year. We just had STEAM night, which was kind of our first cross-curricular thing, even though it was after in the evening. And then building-wide writing strategies and rubrics. So whether you're writing this in social studies or science or ELA, it's not just how we're trying to expand those instructional pieces. And just for fun, I compared, this is last year to this year, just as a piece, but any questions for folks?
I was wondering if you, because you've had a lot of success with UDL, if you ever like collaborate with Heller teachers, since they seem to be uncertain.
I think we're a different beast with a different population.
True.
Yes, I mean, Trevor and I talk, but I think just the sheer numbers of programs that I have, it was kind of not an option. I couldn't, like, my study teachers couldn't afford or be the only ones that serve their kids meet the need.
Right.
So it came out of Reliance, and that allowed me, because I also have more special ed teachers than Trevor by sheer number, allowed me to be more creative. I think we talked, but I think that piece of the area we can continue to grow. If they could see our experiences with it and approach, but also with UDL and something like co-teaching, the relationship between your gen ed teacher and your special education teacher is the most powerful. We have set a culture, we work together, and those are part of our Friday meetings, our Tuesday meetings. Like, it's not, that's the data we're looking at in front of us. And so I think we're just at a different place as they're kind of just trying it on, where my teachers are a couple years in, and things would kind of make sense. We've been building those practices. So.
Yeah.
I have a question about your health curriculum. I'm wondering how much of the health curriculum at the middle school it addresses mental health issues for students. Like what kind of conversations are covered? I'm trying to think of, I don't feel like we had that kind of conversation.
It's not a significant amount. The suicide piece is pretty short and character. I mean, like, it's pretty small. And we're noticing the need. And one of the biggest conversations I'm having with families now on the feedback of them not wanting to hear Kevin Hines, because there's been a few, is that even if your student isn't maybe exposed or ready for that message, if they're in a setting with 600 people, they're going to come across a friend or somebody else, and it's not about them to take it on, but they're going to have exposure and they're going to need tools and support themselves and the exposure piece. Because the sheer numbers of kids who our data is telling us, or at least having a thought or having a friend or knowing somebody is a lot. And what do you do with that information? Because you see these kids who get the information, don't know what to do with it because then it weighs so heavy on them, or they want to be the fixer and they don't have the tools. And so our goal is just to have kids trust adults and connect kids to other kids to adults. But
So Sherry, I can kind of speak to this. The counselors and I are working this spring on revamping the suicide prevention plan that was written 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And we have some trainings coming our way. The counselors and I are listening to about 3 different programs that we could possibly bring to the board for adoption around suicide prevention. And just what Leslie said about how to talk with kids, their peers. Because peers find out sooner than adults do most of the time, and what do you do in response to a peer coming to you with that concern or suicidal thoughts or
Because
ideation?
the data for young girls is extremely high, and it's only getting higher, and it starts at the middle school level, so, yeah. So I would like to hear more about what we're doing to address that, because.
And I would say we're using character strong weekly conversations about like being kind, like those character traits about like, okay, if you know somebody's in trouble, like empathy and being nice, and like, again, we're connectors. If you don't know what to do, who's a trusted adult you could go tell to get somebody, like those are very weekly conversations that come out in just different ways, even whether it's stress and anxiety or different, managing things, friendships. We are trying to be more direct in those places about how do you support people who are adult, how do you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important piece of that for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's getting revamped, because that was one of my concerns that I brought up before, is the suicide prevention program, and it really needed to be examined. So, and it's showing in the data that our students are struggling with it. So I would like to hear more about.
Oh, it'll be coming.
Yeah, it'll be coming. That's great. I just did a whole research paper on this as well.
But it's really hard when you've got a kid who's having suicidal thoughts, to argue about your 4Fs.
Right.
Right, like you're not there yet, right?
Yeah.
Hard for the horse, so like, pause, like, but then you're still in school, what do you do with it all day? Like, those are things those are on the ground navigation pieces for many things.
And what comes of this is the phones and the social media. Many students will text or snap somebody something that would never say it to their face. So how do we address that as well? As far as being kind through social media and their phone use.
Social media in middle schoolers is not a super cool. My son, not allowed to have it, and I didn't see for TikTok account, his phone was gone for a month minimum, and he was like, "Are you serious, Mom?"
Yes, it is.
There you go. Leslie. Now, we have Carly Herman, principal from Arlington High School.
Arlington High School, not the school of choice. It's me. Mandatory. And you will like it.
And if not, we got Sister who, I'll be out, it's okay, no big deal, great fit for everybody. So anyways, cool thing, I have 2 brand new to me assistant principals this year, so that's been really interesting, kind of getting them to learn the Arlington culture where we're at, so, I look at their names and I go, oh, what a team. That's wonderful. All right, so we'll kind of go through our SIP mid-year report. And I am quite passionate about where we're at right now. So now I'm all sidetracked thinking about posts and middle schools, acres coming up and Howard. Okay, so I'm planning for next year already. So one of our first goals, right? 9th grade success, every freshman on time for graduation. That's our goal, right? Have we hit 100% yet? No, but that's our goal. We will pursue that. We do this with a lot of different supports. One, we've got Eagle Study on Fridays, and that is for every kid. Now, keep in mind, we used to have this 3 days a week with transportation, so a little bit trickier now, no transportation. But we do provide para support, and we do a lot, especially with National Honor Society, to have tutors for students coming in, so kind of that peer tutoring. So not the success we've seen in the past, but it is a solid intervention, just not as big as we used to have it. So we're not able to really hit every kid there, but it's a start in the right direction, kind of getting us back where we used to be. We also run a freshman academy PLC. So a lot of our kids have targeted interventions with specific teachers.
not the same class period, but across the day. And then they meet monthly for specific freshman PLCs. And Axelson has been doing a lot of work to revamp some of that because it used to be a lot stronger. And then COVID happened, we survived, and now let's get some good stuff back, right? And look at what else we need to be doing and kind of revisit all of that. We also have been doing a lot more, I think, in RTI. So we have weekly RTI meetings that all of our assistant principals go to, again, for every kid. But right, thinking about freshmen right now, to look at what mental health supports we need. I cannot tell you what a difference it has made to have Travis Hooch with us every single day, all the time, right? We've got Rhonda Moen and just the struggle, same struggles that you're hearing from our other schools that our high school kids are going through as well. And how much of a difference that has made. I also, if I look at the four of us, right, you've got two English teachers and two SPED teachers, so former SPED teachers, right, too. So I have a lot more, I think, capacity on my team right now to really look at what interventions we have for some of our kids who are really struggling, not just emotionally and those kind of things, but you know, how do I navigate my IEP? How do I, all the different pieces, and especially as we look at our pullback on things like our resource rooms and expanding our co-teaching model, how do we continue to provide those supports? Because it's still not working for every kid, right? So we see a lot of growth, but where do we keep catching those kids and how do we keep building that model? I would say another huge difference, and it's not really on here anywhere, but is having a very dedicated library paraeducator. Like, it has been a huge difference to have somebody who wants to see the library as a place for kids to be. Not just for come check out your books, but she's become the tech expert to fix everything, has started to really just know every single kid. Probably helped that I had her kids in 8th grade student, you know, and networking, but yes, who else can I steal? What do you get that? Just kidding. And then now as we look at our incoming freshmen, those 8th graders, which I met a lot already, in fact, 4 of their names are in my phone right now, because we're already friends. I was like, what are we doing? I don't think so. Yeah, we were having all kinds of problems up in the top of the bleachers. Did you guys sit up in the top of the bleachers back in the day? Because I never did. That was not me. That was not me. But that's where I sit now. But our link group, right? Taking our upperclassmen as mentors, connecting them with our freshmen. And that's something I don't think we've leveraged as much as we really could. So it's one of the pieces I want to grow for our incoming freshmen. And how can we build in more of those supports throughout the year? We used to have it. It was better, but I think we can do even more than that. 8th grade parent night that we just had. That's huge. We have not seen a crowd that big. And
So the one for bowling alley or what was?
no, that was at Arlington High School.
Oh,
So,
the one
yeah,
that's-
so for that, for 8th grade parent night in the spring, we run one in the fall too, but in the fall, we just invite the parents after, you know, freshman day. This one, we have all of the kids that come in the gym to do activities with our kids. I went and led a bunch of that stuff, and then we run a whole parent portion, and then we have a whole club sport fair kind of and everything. So, you know, our Anonymous table is out there, right, and everything. So you got people checking that out, and yeah, we have a lot of different things that are going on there to start pulling kids in to see just how much we have that we can kind of jump into and feel like we belong at Arlington High School. We'll run freshman home visits again this year. Visit every freshman home, and I mean, I don't know how many times we go, hey, you remember that house? Do you remember that kid? Do you remember that whatever? Because it makes such a difference for us to see where our kids are coming from. Huge difference. And when we go out, right? And so families just seeing that we will go all, I mean, we've been to the far, far ends of Mount Vernon, we up in the hills and the sticker bushes, I mean, whatever it takes, right? To get there, because we want to know our kids, but we also want them to be seen, you know? And then right now, our counselors have been going to middle schools to schedule and meet a lot of their kids. Right now, we've got a couple of names from the middle schools that already been going to kind of networking with. I'm gonna find that kid, right? So I get to know that kid already. And then Kyle and I hope to up into Heller and Post and do something that we get closer to the year. That's good too, because these guys give me great tips, get to know these ones right now, and it's a great start just to bring them in to join us. And then we'll run another fall parent night for freshmen as well. So we build a lot. And the big thing, we know that if we can get freshmen through successfully this first year, they are much more likely to graduate on to any of their on grade level peers. The other portion I want you to remember, as I go through this, is that their first 30 days of attendance are going to predict 74% accuracy
also that graduation piece, right? So if they're there the first 30 days, right, show up, and you've been hearing us talk about attendance issues, right? So our numbers are right with everybody else's, right? Attendance is a huge issue, and this mental health. Okay, I want to get the real mental health, but these other ones, right, where we're just not coming. What do we do to get those kids back, you know, and what do we do to get them engaged? And what really is the issue? So kind of separating that, so the triage thing, right? And health supports, and then these guys that just need to probably get out of bed and come, you know, those pieces, right? Maybe I need to be there for bucket of water. Kidding. The other thing I think that's starting to make a difference, and I didn't think about this till Trevor was talking, so thank you, Trevor, you're my inspiration. But I've been working a lot with boosters, because I think with boosters, we haven't really been hearing a lot of student voices when you get to boosters. There's a lot of potential there, because our community gives a lot, our community cares a lot, we know those pieces. So they've now been hosting 2 clubs or sports per meeting to hear from each of them. Here's what we do, here's what this is, and we've got over 40 clubs, right? And then our sports, you know, those pieces. So they've been bringing them in one at a time to kind of talk through what they do. We think it'll take about 2 years to get through everybody, which is great. And then what do you need, right? What do you need? And it's kids coming and presenting, right? So our DECA kiddos just came and presented, talked about their needs and how it's going on, all the different presentations. Softball just came. So hearing from kids, like why they connect with it and what they need, what they're hoping for, and to grow, and just building that community piece. Because I'm seeing the same thing we're hearing here about the parents just really not really involved. The high school level, that's not super unusual. Because, you know, you're an adult now, go do your thing. Right? But it is definitely less. And sometimes, you know, when we call, it's a different response we used to get. Not every time, but just not always the same backup, I guess. If we look at our, goal 2, there it is. Looking specifically at equity and having a safe environment for our kids. Our student diversity club, I've been doing a lot more to work with them and hear our needs. It's pretty tiny, so we're going to grow that because we're missing a lot of voices. Right, 750 kids, we get all those voices in, right? And then advisory, our character strong focus, and I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing what happens in the middle schools, build this capacity, and we kind of jump in on that, right? Feeding into us differently, it's really exciting. We do have over 40 clubs for our kids, so a lot of connection. Just like Leslie mentioned, we've got Kevin Hines coming to Arlington High School this week. He will only be speaking to 11th and 12th graders at our school. And I can talk about why. I have not yet, can't remember. So let me know if you have questions on that. But we also ran a training for staff this week, partnered with Howard Cannot. And about half my staff were trained. And I think that's a capacity we need to continue to expand so that the right supports are there. You have the pre, the actual intervention, and then some post stuff because of a lot of support.
Can you clarify the training again? I'm sorry.
So we had somebody from Silly Valley Health come and
Snohomish County.
Snohomish County, thank you. Sorry with an S. But come and talk us through what the need, what what the need is looking like, where we're seeing kids at risk, suicide, kids and adults, fentanyl, some of the other things that we're seeing out there.
Okay.
And I'm getting some really positive feedback from my staff, or to Trevor, but yeah. But it's definitely staff was like, this is more of what we need, right? Because when we went to school to become teachers, you know, you took a class. Right, not classes, you took a class because at the time that was a need, right? And then we move on. But now as we come back from huge periods of isolation, the damage is there, right? It's there and it's a lot to go back from. And then we've also been doing a kind of just on the security standpoint, kind of a monthly meeting and security look. How it comes from quite a different school and background, which is great. So we asked some really different questions for us. We're also meeting every time with our 2 security personnel to really look at what the need is because it changes, right? Kids find different areas and different things to do so that we can be more on top of making sure that that's safe for everybody. And the vaping is a problem in Arlington High School too. But I will tell you the amount of stuff that we pulled up with kids this year compared to last year, now that cell phones are not traveling around with them, has been huge, huge. Like my pile compared to, yeah, it's been huge because we're not networking, we get out of the bathrooms anymore like that. Just kidding.
What's the difference there?
So instead of kids being able to have their cell phones out with them in the hallway, they cannot have their cell phones on them during instructional time, right? Unless you're in a class, your teacher has you doing something, whatever. So if they leave leave class to go to the bathroom, no cell phone has to stay in the classroom.
Right,
And what we saw before, that's how kids were networking and meet up in the bathrooms.
sure.
So that's drastically cut down on the amount of stuff that we have.
Sure.
Like, maybe not on campus, right? Maybe kids still have it on them, but the amount that's not transferring from kid to kid to kid, right? So,
And then not to, sorry to just
no, you're good.
sidetrack, but is the policy similar at middle schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't, same thing, we have not allowed cell phones.
Okay, I don't think so.
Unless specifically given permission from us.
Yep. Yeah, and we networked on this all before school started, so that we were all on the same page.
Okay, I assumed that was the case, but I guess it wasn't.
It's a great question. It's a great question. Yes.
Yeah, we got to witness that a couple months ago.
Yeah.
In the classroom.
Yeah, we ended up with quite the stack down in the office, so it's,
That-
yeah, it's comes to be kind of, I don't know, kind of a game, I think, for Google, especially how many can I collect today? But anyway, goal 3, when we're looking at closing the gaps, like I mentioned, we are looking at co-teaching model improvement, right? Right now, there's a lot of, you've got your main teacher and you've got your support, not 2 teachers with equal capacity in those pieces. And so, Al and I, along with the rest of the team, just did a visit to Hidden River Middle School. We're hoping to hit up one of the high schools and look at just some differences in how they function. Biggest things we're looking at is common planning and having our 2 teachers together consistently, right? So you have your gen ed and sped teacher together all day, right? For those classes all day. Right now, there's a little bit too much mixing and matching, kind of throwing it off a little bit in terms of consistency and capacity. Yeah.
Currently, I'm trying to get this in my mind. So how many, are you talking about every gen ed classroom having a sped
No.
teacher? No. So what percentage of classrooms would be getting a co-teaching opportunity?
The same percentage we have now, and I don't know that without Kyle.
Okay.
But to be honest, I don't know that without Kyle. That is my other half for that piece. Nikki's my other half for.
So how does it work now? So
So right now I have approximately off the top of my head, 3 math teachers that have a co-teacher, a special ed co-teacher for part of the day.
Okay,
And then we specifically have kids in those classes that are
Right.
services, about the same number for English.
okay. And then you were looking at changing.
Changing so that there's the same consistent teacher. So right now I might have 3 English teachers and then you have 1 sped teacher who's here for 2 periods, here for 2, maybe here for 1.
Okay.
So instead, the 2 of you are together all day.
Okay,
You guys are not, no co-teacher for you,
Right.
co-teacher for you all day. So you have that consistency and that capacity.
okay.
And then also looking as much as we can at building in a common planning thing. Right, and that's over and over again, obviously, right?
Yeah, got it.
Everywhere we've been. So, and then we have drastically cut down on resource classrooms, right? We will continue to do that, and River has no resource classroom. Right, and so there's a lot of potential there, to see what we need, and we are working right now on what a redesign of both our co-teaching and our behavior programs might look like. So I'm making a magic on those pieces, as we build all that together. So stay tuned. We will let you know what it's gonna be looking like as we continue to learn and build our capacity in that. Mentioned attendance, right? Up on the top is the OSPI report from last year, 97.8% regularly attend. Oh, what's this, 63.4? So attendance, like, in this whole mental health is, what do we need to do to get them back, right? And I think that's our huge problem we all need to work on and talk about and figure out and, catch the kids. Really strive to get rid of that, okay? Everybody in? Good, fantastic, we will.
No.
I'm so in. Let's get rid of it. We don't need it. All right, I need to make connections in there, okay. Anyway, personal opinion. Our goal number 4. Damn, you guys cooking at the front. No more, she's done. No, our goal number 4, we're looking specifically at UDL. We, much like how the middle school mentioned, this was really kind of our first year diet. We had a lot of resentment, bitterness, whatever last year for a lot of different reasons. And so just our staff there and ready to engage in together. It's not. And so building that capacity, building our connections back up as a staff has been huge. We've focused this year on two things, on variability and on student engagement. Those two things, with everything we do come back to just variability and student engagement, right? So we have a clear focus, things we can look at as we do all of our training. And now we're getting staff sharing out every single time. Here's what I've designed, here's what I'm doing. We've actually given them homework, but they have to send us lesson. You know, so we can look at how we're building this capacity, because sometimes, you know, when you're fighting something and you need some pretty darn clear guidelines to get you back a little bit.
Randy, what are
Yeah.
some of their concerns about implementing and changes? What's the
It's-
barrier for the teachers? to
Okay,
make
so
change?
barriers are a great question. It's not the implementation of UDF. It's the time at which it was presented when our staff was struggling. We struggled a lot last year with totally, like, it's not about UDF, it's about the struggle and where we were at. And so anything, there was just pushback.
You think so? Welcome.
Yes, so it's not about UDF, it's not about variable engagement. Yeah, every teacher believes in that.
Their stress level was up at the very
It
top
was-
and they couldn't add one more thing.
We could not do it. Yes, we could not do it. So,
I'm
so it's
familiar
like
with that.
we're, yeah, so it's like we're starting right now. We're starting right now. In fact, we've been calling it Eagle Design Learning, so EDL.
There you go.
So,
Reframe.
well, we need to do some more staff connecting too. We had, last year was a rough one for us, so we're getting it back. As we look ahead at, some of the changes, I mentioned I want to, look at leveraging Leap Crew a little bit better. We can also leverage our Friday advisory a lot better than we do right now, like a lot better. And so looking at that, we just need the time to sit and plan. And we have that coming up this summer, so, oh, and the blue up there, that's our UDL days, so you can kind of see the balance and mix per month, as we look through that. Okay, question?
Was that feature version?
There's so many people, so many people.
It was a lot.
We haven't had that many in so long, it's perfect. Any questions?
Mr. Director Keenan, have any? We'll make sure we get on there.
He's there, you just need to talk to him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Thank you.
Heather, we're back to you. Have an opportunity for-
We are scheduled to be here until 7:30, and I think that respect everybody biological needs to take a break if that is all right. Can we recess for about 10 minutes and then come back? Is that all right with everyone? All right, well, welcome back. Thank you for letting us have a recess. Now we'd like to welcome Carrie Houghton.
Right, thank you. So it was good timing as far as the order, because everything you just heard from the schools, I have part of all of that around discipline and attendance and equity fund that comes our way. So I'm just gonna touch on a few things here, and then after that, I have a short presentation about our vaping epidemic that we're dealing with right now, so. It does not do that at all.
Wow.
Great. So the first action plan item here is to meet, so this year, if you remember, we have educational equity facilitators in every building. I meet with them once a month, and then they go out and do some professional development for all staff. On what we planned together. I've also done the same professional development with our bus drivers and a few of our kitchen workers as well. But our main thing this year has been to implement Speak Up at School modules. We've done 4 of them so far, and then we are coming to you on April 10th to give you a little bit more information about that. So I won't share anything more. Just keep you guys on your edge of your seats to learn more about that. And then we're also looking at plans for next year and possibly coming to the board for approval for our learning for justice standards. They had a presentation for the district and community equity team about a month or so ago that we had some classroom teachers that showed how those standards align with what we are already doing. And so it won't be anything new, but it will be just something that can support our classroom people on how to respond to some slurs that we're hearing in our classrooms, so. And then, oh, sorry, that's the wrong button. So, and then the other thing that we started this year that has been so powerful is getting to hear more from our student voices, student advisory council. At the beginning of the year, our plan was to meet with them 4 times the entire year. They are a very strong advocacy group, and they wanted to have action this year. So they actually helped us plan one of our modules for the Speak Up at School, where they wanted to hear how their student voices out there for us to learn from. And then they are now, the next time we meet, we're going to be planning video to share with the board about what's been successful with that group this year and what do they want to see as their plans moving forward. Our timing, our dates need to be coordinated with the high school schedule, because our last date was the freshman night, which we had to cancel because most of those students were involved in the freshman night, which is where they should be. So coordinating that schedule at the beginning of the year, so we look at what's happening in school and then making sure we're not having the dates at the same time. Continue to add resources to the monthly Padlets that I created last year, and then this coming year is to find additional Padlets to honor and acknowledge more of our marginalized groups. So there's some resources available for classroom teachers with that. An equity audit. So I'm working with the Student Advisory Council. As you know, we had that equity audit last year that we gave in the spring. We analyzed some of that data, a couple of the board study sessions, but working with the Student Advisory Council to look at those student questions and to either edit those or to think we need this question because we need to find out this information. And then also going to work with them about using those questions to bring it down to elementary level so we can get some information from our 4th and 5th graders. Along the equity audit, I'm working with the educational equity facilitators to look at the staff questions and do the same thing. What else do we need to know from our staff, and what questions do we need to ask? And then this year, I started facilitating the counselors. I meet with them once a month. Pretty good system that we have going. The secondary counselors come in, it's a Friday afternoon, come in for the first hour. Elementary joins them, and so we're all there for that second hour. Secondary leads, and then I just have the elementary, so we can really focus in on issues that are happening with just secondary and elementary and then across the board. We have completed the comprehensive school counseling plan, transition plan, and we're gonna be bringing that to you for approval at one of the April, you're gonna see me a lot in April, I think, at one of the April board meetings. And the focus there is to really look at their use of time. That comprehensive school counseling plan is supposed to be an 80-20 model. So 80% of their time is direct and indirect services with students, and then 20% of that time doing other things. So the direct and indirect is some small group meetings, classroom instruction, advisory meetings, student groups, individual meetings, home visits, crisis intervention. So a lot of those things our counselors are already doing. So it hasn't been as big of a shift as I think what they thought it would be when we started this work in the fall. Most of our counselors are at about a 70-30 model right now, so we don't have a lot of shifting to do. And that depends, right? So we've taken 2 weeks of use of time data, we call it, where they just track their time for a week. What do they do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? We did that in October. They just completed another one in February so that we can start analyzing that data and say, okay, where are you spending the bulk of your time? Because there are a few counselors, in elementary and secondary that, okay, what is this counselor doing that you're not doing? Because there's a little bit of discrepancy there, but that's just, we don't collect the data, we can't have those conversations. And then just like I said, everything you heard from the principals above that, I have my Pendleton with attendance, discipline, and all of the above. So any questions around equity work and what's happened so far? Okay. All right, so our vaping epidemic, I've been calling it. There we go. Okay, so some of these slides I pulled from the Snohomish County Health Department. A couple of gals came out and worked with Weston teachers and had some nurses and building administrators join that training. They also did the same training for our bus drivers at that semester day in January. So I pulled some of this from their slideshow, and then I have some data to share with you as well. So nicotine is the most common thing that we're seeing as far as what they're vaping. We are seeing a rise in marijuana as well, but really nicotine is what most of our students are vaping, which is you can see here the negative effects on the body. We got headache, we got dizziness, we have trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, chest pain, vomiting. What makes me wonder about this is the number of students that are caught vaping. We have many more that haven't been caught, right? And so when you look at the data for every one of those incidents, think about how many more they're just not catching. So this makes me wonder, is this an attendance issue problem here? I mean, if they're not sleeping, they don't feel well, they're not gonna come to school. So I'm wondering if there's a connection here between the number of students that we have vaping and the number of students that we have that are staying home. So the evolution of nicotine vaping devices. So it's come quite a ways. So, we had the beginning, we had the little mini cig lights that were easier kind of to catch. And then we had the vape pens, which most of the students that we catch last year had the vape pen. And then the mod box isn't as easy to hide, right? It's a bigger instrument. So we could catch those. Now we're getting into the point where they actually look like USB devices. So hard to catch. I mean, many students are carrying around USB devices. So how does that look different from the vape device? And then we have these other ways that they're finding. We have the sweatshirts, or at the end, the little sweatshirt strings is the vape device. We have the backpacks. We have the Apple Watch that you just pop this off, and it's not the Apple Watch, but it looks like the Apple Watch. Pop this off, and that's a device. and then the inhaler.
That's great.
Also, so trying to stay current with the devices that are getting produced and developed is almost impossible.
Gary, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Where are kids getting these?
So the data is showing that most of the students, either they have money and they give it to a friend to purchase. And then there's a number of our students that are getting it from home. You know, so they have parents that are vaping, and so they have those devices at home. But most of them come from having somebody purchase it for them, or
So how does the sweatshirt work exactly? Do you have to buy, I mean, you don't buy a sweatshirt every time, it's some.
no, you just put the little device in.
So you're getting the device, okay.
So the strings on a hoodie.
Yeah.
One of them is connected to the base. And the other one has the draw area on it where you put it in your mouth.
How they designed that, I have no idea.
And these don't get approved. That's what's amazing to me, is that the capitalist society we live in.
Yeah.
Was this.
So, this is a slide also from the Snohomish County Health Department's presentation. And this is where Brian and I both, when we heard this, were pretty like, oh boy, how are we going to deal with this? So you can see here, 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade, these 8th graders right here that had used e-cigarette or vape in the past 30 days, used it, but had no idea what substance was in that vape. It's peer pressure, everybody else is doing it, not being educated, having no idea. So this changed kind of our thinking around what do we need to do to educate our students. Have some answers.
I've been hearing that fentanyl is on the rise and the numbers are increasing dramatically, and it's pretty much in everything, and you can just assume that any drug might have fentanyl in them. What happens when a kid vapes fentanyl?
Can you know, is it available?
I don't know. That's a good
I think it was
question.
all tablets. That's,
Oh, yeah.
It's all over, right? I
it's
mean,
in everything. I mean, you can get it in a format.
they can melt, they melt fentanyl to put into. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and they're all, and they're not like, I mean, not, you know. When you hear fentanyl, I don't know if you're thinking that they're just putting it in their mouth and swallowing a pill, and that is not what's going
Okay, so that's what I was
on.
thinking.
No,
So there's a
0,
way of acquiring the fentanyl high that isn't necessarily a gun.
right,
Okay,
mostly smoke,
I had no idea.
chopping it up, eating it out, it's today's heroin.
Right, okay. My understanding
Well,
also. Okay.
in 70.
So we're at the point, you know, up until I would say a couple of weeks ago, that we really didn't know how to, or how we can educate our students around this. We have some things we put into place now. Because, you know, what we've done is suspensions. Well, that's not gonna change the addiction. I mean, students are vaping during the day because they can't get through the day without. So just pulling their vape pen and suspending them isn't an answer, because they're just gonna get another vape pen, and then they're gonna maybe stay home because they know they're gonna be searched or whatever else. But here's what we're seeing. So this is our current this year suspension data just since September. So you can see here that most of the time, unless we've tried other things, 1/4 of our suspensions are just for vaping nicotine. And this is across the district. I didn't separate it out, but between the middle schools and the high schools. So 1/4 of our suspensions have been just for vaping. And again, like I said at the beginning, that's what we've caught, right? There's many more out there that we just aren't catching. Students are getting very savvy about where to hide and how to hide their vape pen, so we can't find it. Short-term suspensions, most of the time, you know, we just keep them in school for the tobacco or nicotine, so only 6% of short-term suspensions so far this year. We like to keep them in. We have a course that they take when they've been caught with a vape, but almost 100% of those students have been caught vaping again, so it's not making a difference. The marijuana, so 15 out of 200 in-school suspensions, have been marijuana cases, and then 23 out of 133. So we do out of school suspend more often for marijuana than we do for the nicotine. Bigger thing. This is the 2021 Healthy Use Survey data. This is our students. So have you ever even once in your life smoked marijuana? You can see the numbers there. 35% of, so these guys would be what our seniors, 35% of them had smoked marijuana when by the time they were in grade 10. And then used a vape pen, it's almost half of our seniors. And that's 2021. We've seen a rise. I mean, 2023 data would be much higher than this.
And it's an 18, is it 18 or is it 21 for vape? Isn't it? I don't remember. What is the rest of it?
Isn't it 18 for?
It's 21.
For both?
For
That's what I thought. It was
nicotine and tobacco. Okay, 21.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Okay, so depressing data, but how are we learning about these dangers? So for our students, we have a couple of assemblies coming up. For our 5th grade, we've realized that we need to start before 7th, 8th grade. So our 5th graders are Snohomish County Health Department, the same ones that did the presentation for our staff, are coming, and they're doing a vape or a virtual assembly so that we can connect all of our 5th graders at the same time with the same information. So that's going to be a virtual across the district, Philly Valley included, 5th grade assembly. We're just talking about what is vape, what's in the vape, what are the dangers of the vape and or nicotine. They're going to touch at that point a little bit on marijuana. And then that same group is coming in April as well and doing a full-blown assembly at both of our middle schools. Same information, a little bit deeper. They're going to show a few of the devices so that our students know what those devices are. Obviously, our data is showing from Snohomish County Health that many of our students that attempt or start vaping don't even know what they're putting into their body. And then our Arlington Youth Council is putting together a presentation to share with our middle school students as well. They're working on that. And then, like I said, there's that online course which also gives more information, but hopefully we can get this in the information earlier than by, because once they get caught, they're already addicted. So we need to get this information into our students' hands way earlier. For staff, like I talked about, Snohomish County Health Department met with some administration and some teachers and some nurses, and then the bus drivers, because the bus drivers are seeing it on the buses as well. And then for families, that needs to happen. I mean, we need to be sharing this information with families so that they know what even to look for, right? I mean, who would think that if you found a USB device in your child's bedroom that would possibly be available.
Carrie, what do you think the most effective way to have family engagement? Because first thing comes to mind is something like something at the VPAC, but I'm like, how many parents are gonna show up?
I think it needs to be school-based. I think we need to do it at the school so that it can be with staff they know and trust and.
So you're saying the
Parent
school, maybe with parents to come in and meet the, okay.
And it could be Snohomish County Health Department leading that.
Yeah.
They're the experts in the field. They're the ones that are seeing it across. And then school staff are there to support.
So when you're talking about I might have missed it, but you're talking about the assemblies and telling the students what is in the vape pen or what possibly could be. I heard you mention marijuana. Are you guys gonna talk about like fentanyl and nicotine and all of that? You can, like, is that a restriction?
I don't know if it's a restriction. That's not what their presentation will be about.
Okay.
So it'll just be factual information from the health department.
Okay.
What did you think that like is an effective strategy for prevention? I mean,
Well, I could be a millionaire if I could figure that out.
I know.
It's everybody
I'm just really scared.
I know.
I look at the future of society and I understand.
I think starting earlier.
I know I'm just saying no, but.
I mean, I think definitely starting younger, so we're getting it into educator at a younger age. I actually, on Friday, I applied for a grant through the Snohomish County Human Services, It's a one-time $15,000 grant that would be used. I'll find out Friday if we got it awarded. But it's a way to address the vaping and the mental health crisis. So we would implement the Botman Life Skills Program, which it starts at 3rd grade. This spring, it would just be training for our staff and for mainly our counselors. And then it does have a parent piece with it. So if we get that grant, all of the training would be taken care of, then we would just have to buy like the workbook type stuff for the kids next year. But I think I can get that grant also, but we have to get the training piece first. So I find out Friday about that. But it basically teaches you, starting at 4th grade, how to cope with stress management and anxiety. And so they don't start going to the nicotine and marijuana to cope with that. And then it does start at 5th and 6th grade about the nicotine and how that has an effect on the brain. And then it, like I said, it has the parent piece to the program. Could be some potential there to even do more. So right now, I mean, I've talked about the assemblies. We have a vape sensor at Weston High School. I mean, that's not totally the answer be all to anything, because there's a lot of false things that come from that. Parent communication, every time we catch a student with a vape pen of any sort, we are educating the parent in that moment about this is what we found, this is the effects of that. So that parent piece is happening. Like I said, we're doing in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. That is not an answer. We know that, but right now that's what we have. But assemblies are coming in.
So how does that vape detector work at Weston? And could we expand that program and put vape detectors in all the bathrooms, in all the secondary schools? And
You want to talk about
and how does that program work and how much does it cost? And
So, we've talked about vape detectors in the past, and I've been generally opposed to them. But that was only for one reason, and that was because they were wireless devices, and they had a tendency to become disconnected from our network and not work at all. So we've got a new product that we installed in Weston last year. Kind of liked it. There was some construction, found it, got it reinstalled. This one has got a wired connection to the internet, so it's more secure. But there's a range of components of actions that it looks at. One of them is it detects vapor from a vape device. It detects THC, and it also detects loud noises like an elevated voice, or God forbid, a shot from a gun. So those are the 3 areas that it looks at, and they're displayed on a screen that's connected to a Vigilon camera system, and then it also sends out a text message to a designated person. Right now, the designated person is Andrea at 100 Mark. But what we found has been some false positives, so to speak, and we're trying to get the vendor to come and recalibrate the machine and make sure that it's working the way it's supposed to be working. So we're learning about how to use this thing before we start installing it across the district. And we haven't gotten to the point of devising a distribution plan yet, but the bathrooms are the obvious place. Because there's multiple purposes that can be met in terms of safety and security, not just the vaping, which is a big part of it, but also there's a fight in the bathroom.
I think it's fair to make it kind of the guinea pig and work out the kinks of what that is before we consider, but
Yeah,
definitely keep us up to speed on maybe where that's on there.
Right, do you know how much those little machines
they're
cost?
$3,200 a piece.
And then is there like a
relatively affordable.
monitoring fee or?
There's no licensing, then you just get it and go. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, my concern is I definitely would like to communicate it because, my kids aren't in high school anymore, so I'm not as abreast on this, but my concern is when I hear fentanyl, I go through, right, the roof. And I think the parents need to be scared. I think the parents need to know, hey, it's not just this innocent, hey, it's nicotine, because once I read the THC, and once we hear this guy here is introducing me to the idea of fentanyl now I have more things not to sleep on tonight, Mike. I think parents need to know the reality.
Yeah.
And I think they have to know that that's very serious.
Possibility. Yeah, I can talk to the Stonebridge County Health Department. The information I have.
Just to, couple things that maybe. Obviously, when we are responding, like if we, like collectively get a vape device, like we confiscate and destroy, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what level of, maybe. Of course, vape devices are illegal, and I'm sure it's a misdemeanor, et cetera, but at what level does law enforcement get involved in?
They don't, I mean, yeah, not at this level at all. We call them law enforcement when there's a lot more found that could be a selling. Kind of that we have a student possibly selling and distributing
So
on
no
campuses.
THC involvement, they get involved, alcohol on campus, they wouldn't get involved, fentanyl on campus, they wouldn't. get
Well,
involved.
that would be.
Or what would be, I guess, what's,
What's the point?
what's
Yeah.
the difference between, I mean, they're all illegal.
Yeah.
Why is fentanyl for personal use,
Yeah.
why is that a trigger and marijuana, alcohol, whatever it may be, isn't?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. My
Okay.
thinking around that is the law enforcement being able to respond as often as they would have to respond with everything
But not
that we're
our-
catching. Yeah.
But not our issue.
But
I mean, that's,
I think a tipping point
right,
is that if they feel that they're in a distribution, selling. That
100%.
even though it's illegal to have nicotine, might not necessarily be considered a crime, but they're selling, it's
Sure.
illegal.
Yeah,
Maybe,
for sure.
but it presses up
Right.
that possible potential of crime, I don't know, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
if it's a felony and they're distributing, I mean, that's a whole different deal than
Yeah,
if it's their,
yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, maybe Brian
own
gives.
personal consumption.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fentanyl is killing a lot faster.
Mhm.
There's a limited distribution. now.
Sure.
Vapes are pervasive.
Mhm.
You can get them and same with marijuana in the state to get that. We don't like it, one, it's against the rules to have it in school. It's not gonna kill you, so.
Sure.
We do have a response to fentanyl in school, and that all the nurses are trained on recognizing signs of opiate intoxication and administering Narcan. And we also provided that opportunity to bus drivers in January as well, gave them a chance to pick up a fentanyl, a dose of Narcan. If they wanted to keep it, we're not requiring them to keep it with them or requiring them to be trained at this point. Some districts are doing that. But we did give them an opportunity to get it, because I don't know, maybe it's neurotic or paranoid. But I'm really concerned about somebody shoving some fentanyl in the cracks of a bus seat and schools, another student finding it and ingesting it, not knowing why it is. So we're trying to get that capacity built so that we can respond to it.
Right.
Yeah, well, especially since there's multiple grades using things.
Sure.
And fentanyl's looking like everything. Yeah. Candy, Benadryl, whatever.
Brian, could you put a vape detector on a bus?
No.
When you wash anything. Yeah, well, the sound would probably set it off also.
It's a bus.
Pretty easily, and not in the cafeterias either, because.
Yeah.
Has there been any fentanyl overdose incidents on?
And I'm
That we were aware of? Thank goodness, that's great.
Not during school.
No, not in our schools.
That's great.
Thank you, Carrie. That's for presenting. We'll look forward to April.
So for the teaching and learning department, we have the goals around universal design for learning. The end goal is to produce a 5-year UDL implementation and support plan, one for elementary, one for secondary. So far, we've been able to, Marilee referenced a field trip to Hidden River Middle School, so which is in Monroe, and they are in their 8th year of working with implementing UDL, more specifically co-teaching and inclusionary practices. So, it was exciting to get to see that in action school-wide. Hidden River has actually gotten rid of resource firms. They still have special education teachers and resource, what we would think of as resource room teachers, but all of their special education services are received in the Daniel classroom. So that was really interesting to see. And we talked a lot about what it took to schedule that, what it took to build the groundwork to make that successful and then keep it going, right? It's one thing to try it for a year, it's another thing to persevere through 8 years.
Yeah.
So it was really, really great field trip. The plan was to have an elementary and a secondary trip. Sadly, the University of Washington is the one we're working with to organize these. When I made inquiries about this in October, they said there are no elementary visits available for this year. We'll keep you on a wait list in case there's a cancellation, but don't hold your breath. So we felt blessed to get to go to Hidden River. We were actually supposed to go in December, and then it was canceled for that day. So this was our reschedule. The good news was being there with the entire secondary team that was there. The University of Washington organizer said, I think I can squeeze you into a high school, which is really exciting. So we might get another field trip to see what it looks like when a whole school has embraced this and had some experience under the belt. We call that the zone of proximal development, right? We're at the beginning and it's risky and you have to stretch to get to the next level, but seeing it with fellow teachers and administrators is powerful. So we also said as part of the 5-year plan, we need to develop an instructional vision statement. So what are we looking for across the system? And can we say it in, I like one sentence, but do we need 3? I'm not quite sure where we are. We do have a draft statement together. So we'll work on narrowing it down and then we'll get it with principals so that it's brief enough that you don't have to think too hard to remember it, but can explain it with a great level of clarity. And then last but not least, we'll put together the 5-year plan simply for submission and exploration by the end of May. We are a little bit delayed because we haven't had the elementary trip. Not every secondary principal could make it to Hidden River, so we're banking for some more coming our way for the high school visit. But it's a really good beginning. We've agreed also in writing the plan that Zoom meetings they serve a purpose, but when it comes time to actually compile what we're really going to do, we'll be face to face into the time. The CTE plan, Brian has kind of 3 parts to the goal for the CTE plan: 21st century learning, career connections for the courses, and then making sure that the programs reflect the diversity of the school. So goal 1, getting 21st century rubric reviews. That's happening on a pretty regular basis in PLC. The CTE team is responsible for infusing and improving that over the course of the year, and they're doing it with their department. We have really, we've seen Lisa Rodino come in at least once to talk about school to work. She's quite a dynamo. She has visited 22 classrooms so far and is really working on making sure that kids have the next step vision from coursework to work, job kind of work. Last but not least, proportionality data. I don't know how long it's been since we've looked at proportionality data, but one of the goals is to ensure that the kids that are being served in the program, the percentage of students that are represented in the school. So if we have 12% of our population that is Hispanic, about 12% of our population in the CTE program should be Hispanic. CTE is really quite an adventure because proportionality looks at over-representation, under-representation, and just right, the Goldilocks principle, but some of our CTE courses do have over-representation. So when you think about shop or construction geometry, males are over-represented. So some of the work is to invite girls in. So sometimes over-representation is a good thing too. So a lot of our CTE programs are over-represented with students served in special education, and that is not really a bad thing. So Brian's sharing last year's data, and then they're developing action plans. Highly capable programs. We are we're still working on clustering and ensuring that that's a regular practice across the district. Remember highly capable, there's very little additional funding for it. Back in the day when I was a teacher here, back in 2006, we had pull-out programs, which are, the advantage to pull-out programs is they're clearly boundary, right? You know, you're in a highly capable program when you leave class. Now we offer highly capable services in class. And so, clustering kids in classrooms so that they have think-alike peers matters. And, it's a more effective way to deliver instruction in our current system. We also have, professional learning about differentiated approaches to serving the needs of our students identified as highly capable. There is quite a learning curve. In many ways, delivering highly capable instruction is akin to delivering special design instruction in special education. So there's a lot of continuous support around that. How do I do this? And last but not least, we have an online student learning plan platform that is getting easier to use with time. We've tried to free up Marlene Meyer's time as much as possible to deploy her directly to the point of teacher need. Like she will meet with you during your planning or before or after school to help you work it through so that we have viable, actionable learning plans that impact learning. And when it comes to English language services, Carl loves to play with budgets. It's a little twisted. We're working on that, but he has rearranged some funding to free up some teachers and parents to act more directly in classrooms with teachers that are going to instruction. So more of a coaching model has been freed up there. In goal 2, this is a lot, but talking about training in WIDA, which is a language development assessment, it's quite timely. We started it last year, it's full blown this year. It's a mammoth undertaking and it's taken a lot of professional development support and system support. I'm looking at her because she worked a lot with schools to get it going. Elevation Strategies. Elevation is an online platform to track the progress of our English language learners. It also carries with it instructional suggestions and supports for teachers. So depending on what the data says, here's an idea for you to try. There's an English language cooperative, yes, for that support from our own local network. So you can see 3 elementaries have taken part in WIDA training. We've got 70 staff members who received elevation training at Summer Academy, which is really exciting that there was that level of interest. And the remedial team meets with Carl every Friday. So they have ongoing support there too. And last but not least, our newcomer supports. Carl's worked hard last year. He got some courses going, particularly at the high school for newcomers, because you're trying to earn credits in a system that's not in your home language. And so we played with some credits, giving credit for freshman English for newcomers specifically, some good things. So the next step is serving newcomers in those first few days when they arrive. So there's information packets, and then after the kid is here and ours, what do I do now? So particularly at Camp Prairie, we've had an influx of Ukrainian refugees this year. So Camp Prairie has been really impacted by that last fall this year, where we've got kids in a classroom all day with a really caring teacher who's developing skills on the job. And last but not least, we've got technology. So with a new tech director, we went ahead and moved forward with the idea of updating our technology plan early. So Matt has got an advisory committee going. They've met several times. Their next meeting is this Thursday. And they've reviewed the current plan, determined what has been met and what hasn't been met, are considering those 2 things as they're developing a new plan, and then the plan will come forward for approval towards the end of this year. All those according to he thinks he can move in 3 or 4 full meetings. So that you're going to teach. The teaching and learning plans. What can I answer? Love them for sure.
Less alarming than the baby.
Yes.
Thank you, very interesting. Thank you, Gary, Brian, Brian, for this. Oh, no, I guess, Eric Young, speaking of them.
Right, I can go next. Here's my HR plan. That's really small. I think I have here we go. This looks very familiar because I kind of did this last time, so.
Are there any questions?
About that more training.
I did update this, so we were at 95 last time, so we had a few more even since 2 weeks ago, so this is the time of year where hopefully people are starting to get these finished. Yes, it's taken a lot of my time, and I know it's just principals of the buildings have helped me out too, trying to encourage other people to, hey, remember you have to do this. So that's going well. I can't remember if I talked about emergency sub training. We did have that this fall. We brought some new subs on and we've done a lot better with our sub coverage this year. So that's been a real positive for us, at least in the certificate side. And I talked about the other things. So, any questions? I'm getting a lot of yeah tonight. So.
Wow. Hey, look, Ryan, you gonna follow that?
I'll start off by saying that I didn't walk over the cord.
Good job.
Trust myself that I don't want to collision with it. So trying to think of an analogy to express the district improvement plan for the operations department right now. What I came up with was Master and Commander. Are you familiar with that movie? Okay, so I want you to think of the district's capital program as the HMS Surprise, and we're on the track of the Astronaut. Taken 3 years to get to that point where we think we might be taking it as a prize. And the prize is the completion of the district program that we started in 2020, and in the midst of stormy seas of COVID. So we are seeing the light, are at the final destination ahead of us with the completion of the projects that we provided or promised the community that we would take care of if they trusted us with their funding. You have been provided the details in the past of all the different programs we're operating to meet the goals of the capital program. But I just want to say that even though we may complete the capital program in 2023 by December 2023, there's still more to do. So to continue the analogy, in May, we intend to make a port of call and collect new orders for the surprise. We're going to continue following that. And that program will encompass every school building in the district, and it'll look out across a 30-year period. What needs to be done across the next 30 years in terms of making sure that our facilities remain high quality, safe, and secure, safe and secure for staff, and students to provide good learning.
Yeah, but.
Sheena, run the
Basic of what the side one.
left and right.
Here we go. And it's like my counterparts, it's small, but start with the first one. This is about our receiving software. So our school district finance led an implementation of a new receiving software, and it's comprehensive. It's intended to be used at every building across the district. So initially we implemented it at high school and the middle school levels, and we kicked that off so that they were able to use it in the beginning of the year with the taking the registration time or whatever you call them, the Eagle Days or whatever each middle school calls those days. So that was the first start. And we brought the elementary schools on just recently, and Weston, we provided their training just a couple weeks ago. And so now they should be up and running and doing that recently, that new software. So that replaced just a really old standalone version of software that was being used at the high school. And the middle schools and elementaries really didn't have any kind of receiving software that they were using. So this was very much needed and really will help the internal controls and the district oversight of the receiving and the types of things that are happening out in the buildings. And so the conversations that are around that as well
to shore up the processes around fines and fees and things like that, being equitable, waivers, having documentation of all that, some of the systems that interface with it as well. So library system that's tracking books and the kind of the software that the technology uses for tracking Chromebooks that have been assigned out. It's interfacing with this so that they can see, or if the equipment is returned or the book is returned, it relieves whatever fee was in the receiving software. So it's really good. We're still working on making fully implementation so that everybody really knows best exactly how to utilize it. And it has some good tools in it, but we've got the basics. We're gonna keep working with everyone across the district that's involved with the receiving software to make it utilized to its best intent. Budget. Our improvement goal around that was building a deeper understanding about the budget for the board, for the community, for the staff. And I can say we really have made the roadshow. I don't want to use roadshow around the word of talking about budget and reductions that we're working on. We called it key messages about the budget. We went to every school building and talked with their staff, did a presentation there, had a feedback activity for the staff, and we've done that with almost all the departments as well. Transportation, food, nutrition services. We did 2 sessions here. We're getting ready to meet with the custodial staff for 2 sessions, and we met with grounds and maintenance as well. Really wanted to make sure that we got to as many people as we could, that they were all given an opportunity to hear the message about what is going on with the budget. We worked with the ACE committee as well, did a presentation there. We've been doing the budget advisory task force meetings, and that's progressing. We did that big budget survey that you probably have seen. Did they send it to the board?
Yeah, they received it. It closes tonight at 9 o'clock, and we, as of this afternoon, we were over 800.
Wow. So lots of response, which is really good. And the budget forums that we've been doing as well. We have one more budget advisory task force meeting tomorrow. We have another public forum March 28th.
Next week, and
Yes.
then a Zoom one the next day.
And another one over Zoom. So we really invested the time in that, and it's been really beneficial. It's been hard to be out there doing that, but it's been good work to be doing, and I hope that we can continue to build on that communication so that even in good times, better times, we can still continue to be communicating about the budget and priorities and how our funding works, because that's been something that we've been wanting to continue to strengthen and improve on. This one is review all district policies related to finance and make appropriate updates. I have a notebook in my office and I will be tackling that, but we haven't gotten into that too far yet. So I can report to you more about that as we get down the line. This one as well, implement governmental accounting standards board GASB statement number 96. So I've talked to you about GASB statement 84, I don't know what it was, 87, lease accounting. Well, this is its cousin. It's now about subscription-based information technology arrangements, similar to the lease accounting that we have had to implement and do. And we also have to do something similar with the subscription stuff. So we are working on that. It's not actually have to be done until the end of the 22-23 fiscal year. And so we're still working on figuring it all out. But it's on our action plan because it's a significant effort that we have to do in order to be compliant with it. But we have resources, and I'm participating in a panel in a couple of weeks. My staff's participating in it. We're partnering with technology as well so that they can help us. They need to help us know what all agreements we have and whether they are going to meet the criteria for the special accounting that we have to do for them. So there you know a little bit about that. This last one is going to have to continue to be cycled in because it's on my wish list that we would be able to redesign and update and completely rewrite our business services procedures. But with all of these other things,
it's kind of biting off a little bit more than we could chew to also do this. But I'm gonna keep it on there because you wanna have goals to be getting to and no one's lose sight of that. Definitely want to get to.
Thanks, Gina. Okay, thank you. I'll do that. Okay, here's Bill, Director of Communications.
I have one slide.
Well, Steve,
I know, right. One big run. Okay, here we go. So my first goal is to increase the number of community events and outreach to our families and community because due to COVID, a lot of those connections were lost. And so it's really, my goal this year was really try to reestablish those. During the summertime, we had a back to school fair. The Volunteers of America gathered backpacks we handed out at President's Elementary. It was not as well as attended as we would have liked, but I think that'll improve this next year. We also had a resource fair at the Silly Tribe in September time, I think it was. And then certainly with the budget forms, that's another way to draw families in. The budget task force, those are two things. Same with the master plan thing, those are kind of the lesser two evils, if you will. So this, anyway, you're welcome. So yeah, just we're trying to reestablish all those connections. Let's see, this summer, we're talking with the city about doing the National Night Out. We've never, as far as I know, ever done that as a school district, so it'd be cool to do that, so. Okay, let's see. Okay, so for social media, the second part, I mentioned this in goal 4 about a month or so ago. We have an Instagram account now, so that's actually increasing even since when I presented this a month ago, it's almost doubled. So it's one of those natural things. I think I haven't done anything pushing up a bit. So that's another way to communicate. And then this spring, I'm working with Debbie and I are kind of working together on this. We're gonna apply for a grant through the Washington State Archives, organizing our file room, because I'm not sure we've done a field trip down to the file room, but it's yeah, it needs some help. So the idea of the grant is to help the file room. So we're gonna apply for that and hopefully we're successful. So any questions? Thank you.
Go into grab up the team.
Oh, I
Brenda Booth here for special education. She's here for to share the department. David Heller is unable to be here tonight. He's coming back from a school related.
Sure.
All right, so for the special education, a lot of people, things that have been shared tonight is a lot of the work that is being focused on in inclusionary practices. And one layer with inclusionary practices looking at our LRE, which is least restricted environment, and trying to get a higher percentage of LRE 1, which means that students are in the class in the attendance setting for at least 80% of their day. So our numbers have been increasing for LRE. And now we're really diving into, well, what does that mean? Because you can have students in, but it's not necessarily meaningful or beneficial in RBC growth. And what are the practices that we're doing in the classroom for those students? So all of the UDL work really supports that, as well as the co-teaching. So the action plan item that is really being dove into right now is identifying and comparing using district assessments, students at middle school and high school level, and co-taught classrooms. And so we run some initial data on comparing students, like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students at Post and at Howler, and seeing who would typically be in a resource room model. And then if they're in the co-taught classroom, what does that data look like? So we have the kind of the big scope between the two schools because of where they're at on their journey in UDL. Post has co-teaching happening, Howler not as much yet, but that's part of that journey. And then now what we're trying to do is desegregate that into individual students. And so for individual students, what is their growth in that setting? Because one of the things we learned that kind of piqued our interest at Hinley River, within their co-teaching, there's 6 different models that they intentionally plan for, and they decide like, we're going to be in this model today. We might be in this model this day, and that some of the different models might be where one teacher's teaching, the other's observing, another where they're both equally teaching, or there was even time where like special ed teacher might pull a small group aside to do some progress monitoring or a really discrete skill building. You know, so seeing how can we start to incorporate some of those. As well as the idea of a continuum of services, so they don't have a resource room, but they do think intentionally, like, does this individual student need to be in a co-taught with a special ed teacher and a gen ed teacher, or could they be in a gen ed class just with a gen ed teacher? I mean, some additional accommodations or modifications, or another model they had was a gen ed teacher and a para support, you know, so what layer of support might the student need? And so as we dive into each individual student and what is looking right for them, we can better plan for that and for their programming. That's kind of where we're at with the goal. Do you have any questions?
I appreciate that you're respectful of, and the fact that where the two schools are on their journey, and then having that visit to the other schools at called Hidden River.
Yeah.
And having that as a lens, perspective of like, this is an excellent model. And I'd be curious. I know myself the benefit of a pair. I don't have that luxury now in classroom. But I'd like to see it. If you get a video, if there's a link or a video of what that looks like, I would love to see that. Like if you're on another field trip, just conversing is great, but I'm a real video person. That'd be great if you're able to get that. Just that perspective, I think, would be is one thing to have a co-teaching to gen ed teachers, but when you're talking a special ed or something that interests me. I think
It's really powerful. They talk about how like the gen ed teacher, especially as you go middle school, high school, and very content, like that gen ed teacher is the expert in the content.
Yeah.
And then the special ed teacher is the expert in like the modifications and the differentiations.
To then reach that.
And strategies. And then, but then when you bring those strategies in for your students who are on IEPs, it benefits everybody.
Everybody, that's right. Very nice, thank you.
Thank you. That's. All right, any other questions? All right, here you go.
Are you talking about mine?
Someone might have their phone. But. Is it safe? Our next right will be Monday. Here in the district office. In the boardroom. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion.
Second. It's been to adjourn.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike.
Good night, Mike.
Madam Clerk, can we take a vote? Director Ray.
Yeah.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman. President Levesque. Aye. Director now. All right, we're adjourned. Right?
4 minutes.
Is that my favorite? No, it was Mr. Cleveland. He turned his audio.
No, I wouldn't know.
It's hard when you're.
The Paragon incident, I'm always.
That.